My word. A panel game devised by Tony Shrine and Edward J. Mason. Dilys Powell and Frank Muir challenge Anne Scott James and Denis Norden in a game about words, with Jack Longland in the chair.
And we go straight into the first round, which tests their vocabularies, and 2 marks if they get the meaning of the following words roughly right. Beginning with Denis Norden. And Denis, your word is Perjink. P-E-R-J-I-N-K. It can be perjinkety.
I'm glad it can be perjinkety. When I had a brief but checkered spell at the BBC as a sort of executive, and if you went away on BBC Business, they told you something which I'd never known before. You get what they call a per diem, which is expenses so much per day, you see. And I said, well, what about what I spend at night? Because we went to Paris and, you know, that's where it is. And they didn't know how to answer this. And it occurred to me that if you're going away anywhere which involves hijinks, as well as a per diem for day, you want a perjink for night.
I don't think Scottish elders would approve of that one, Denis, and this is very much more an adjective which describes them.
Oh, it's an adjective. The verb is a doing word. I really haven't the faintest idea what Scottish elders do with a perjink.
It's very difficult indeed. It's a Scottish adjective apparently still used, if not common, I don't know, in Scotland. It means prim, precise, or thoroughly pernickety, and nobody knows in the world how it comes to have that meaning. So it is a difficult word. Sorry. Now, Dilys Powell, it's your turn, and your word is farouche, F-A-R-O-U-C-H-E.
Well, I think that's a French word originally.
Yes.
And it applies to somebody with rather standoffish and savage manners. It's a bit wild and unwelcoming and savage.
Yes.
It's a good word, isn't it?
It's a good word, yes.
There's another word like that, louche.
Yes,
yes.
It's much more difficult. You missed, I think, one little bit, Dilys. It can mean ill at ease and shy, as well as this overtone that there's, in this manner of behaviour, something that repels you. But it could be somebody who just is so countrified that he or she don't appear in town society. That's the other little bit in the word farouche.
Well,
socially inexperienced.
I'll note that down. Thank you.
They're a strange couple. He's farouche and she's louche.
I don't think I'll make the charts. Frank, no, it's your turn. A Purdonium.
It's in the White House. There's a sort of rather large room with about 5 busy corridors debouching from it, and aides to the president keep rushing in and bumping into each other and saying, pardon me. And that's called the Purdonium. It's a metal. It's one of those rare, very, very rare metals for plating astronauts' zip fasteners or something.
If you bump it into this one, you'd find it harder to tend your fire.
Bellows. It's a harmonium. Purdonium is a harmonium which reproduces not notes of music, but cat's purrs. Purdonium. If you bump into it, it hurts.
I'm going to give you one for effrontery. If you are an old-fashioned auctioneer, which I don't think you are, and particularly if you're a Victorian old-fashioned auctioneer, which you certainly are not, you would use this as, when you were selling it, a euphemism for a particular kind of coal scuttle which was invented by a Mr. Purdom. Difficult.
Alfred Lord. Oh, I wouldn't say that.
Alfred Lord Tennyson's sister fell into a coal scuttle when she was a baby.
Well, that's it. That's absolutely... it would be a Purdonium, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know whether she fell into a Purdonium, but she fell into a coal scuttle when
She had too many jinkies.
Now, Anne Scott James, yours, Anne, is a grommet, Grummet, or it can be a grommet as well.
I think it's an agricultural word. It's the sort of grumbling old midget you find in a village and sometimes gets ducked in the pond.
I think you better take a cruise on luxury liner. Would that help you, Anne?
Ah, yes. Sort of games people play at sea.
Yes.
Such as 2 people in a single cabin. That's a grummet.
I don't think we go into that. But on deck...
Oh, that ghastly boring game with which people used when I was young, when people still went by sea to while away the time. Something to do with deck quoits.
Yes, that's right. It's a ring made of twisted rope, and therefore those funny quoits you throw in, deck quoits, are the same thing. Or it can be a hole edged with rope, a metal ring lining an eyelet, the eyelet itself, and all sorts of other things. 1.5. Well, now, before we go on to the next round, here are the quotations that you've been given for the last round of all, and Denis Norden, yours is, "See what the boys in the back room will have." And yours, Frank, is, "If music be the food of love, play on." And the second round is about something in common. So for 2 marks, what do the following words or names or phrases have in common? Denis Norden, yours are Endover, Bunny Hop, Goofy Foot, and Tick-Tacking.
They're not all members of a guide patrol.
I thought they were called Akela or something. No.
Bungy Bottom Goofy Foot. I'm sure I've seen those around. Endover?
Bunny Hop.
Andover.
Perhaps they all occur...
I always thought Andover
in
should
Watership
be...
Down. Do they all occur in
Watership Down, yeah? Are they?
No, they're
not
nice
gooey
sort.
enough. No.
They're not gooey enough for that. Goofy Foot and Tick-Tacking. And an enormous rash of fractures and casualties in the hospitals over the last 6 months or a year.
Well, are they terms used in mugging? Are they degrees of mugging?
No, this is a sport.
An old lady, if you get an old
Oh,
lady...
that's
it's a
terrible skateboard
skateboard.
thing, isn't
Oh,
it?
skateboard, yes.
So dangerous. Poor
That's
old
right.
ladies getting bowled over right, left and centre.
Old lady's
shouldn't
not
be on
supposed to
them.
do it. Old lady's supposed to have chauffeur-driven skateboard.
Well, leaving these terrible skateboarding old ladies out and thinking of skateboarding generally, that's the right answer. A little help, but I think you deserved your 2 marks. Dilys Powell, Dr. Primrose, St. John Rivers, William Collins, and Tartuffe. They're all male. That's not the common link that I want. They have something else in common.
They're all fictional characters to begin with. I think they're all religious, and most of them come out of novels. Tartuffe comes out of a play by Molière, and Tartuffe did pretend to religious morality,
That's right.
which he didn't feel.
That's right.
William
Pride and
Collins
Prejudice.
is Pride and Prejudice.
Quite right,
Pride
yes.
and Prejudice, who really...
He was a pompous ass.
he's a
Yeah. So that he wasn't quite a hypocrite, but he was a pompous ass and a
St.
snob.
John Rivers is Bronte, I think, isn't it?
That's right, Jane Eyre.
Jane Eyre.
Yes, so you get your well-deserved 2 marks. These were all literary, either clergymen or men of religion, either genuine, like Dr. Primrose and St. John Rivers, or bogus, like Tartuffe. And that's what brings them together into this little assembly. 2 marks. Frank Muir, the way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. What have they got in common?
They all proceed in a devious manner?
I don't know.
Well, they do.
It's a biblical. They start from the Bible. Yeah.
That's right.
It's biblical.
Try the Bible.
It comes from the Bible. And
It comes from the Bible.
Give you a bit. It comes from the book of Proverbs.
It comes from the book of Proverbs. Well, they all come from the book of Proverbs, Jack.
Yes,
from the Bible.
They do.
One. They all proceed in a devious manner towards their objective.
1 mark. These are all things which the author of the book of Proverbs, or the authors, said were too wonderful for him, her, or it. There be 3 things that are too wonderful for me, yea, 4, which I know not, the way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. He was being modest, I think. 1 mark. Now it's Anne Scott James. Saxophone, Eschscholzia, Pinchbeck, and Tasmania.
Well, Eschscholzia is a flower.
Yes.
It's Polish too. All named after somebody.
Yeah, I
Did
don't
you
know about
suggest?
Eschscholzia,
Yeah.
Well, Eschscholzia, well, most flowers are named after somebody out there, so it must have been named after somebody called Eschscholz or something.
Yes, absolutely right. Put a von in front of it. Von Eschscholz.
Oh, yes, as I
And
was
he went
about
on
to say.
expedition in 1821 and discovered the
Tasmania
Californian
after
poppy.
Tasman.
Yes.
Pinchbeck after somebody called Pinchbeck, presumably.
What did he do?
Was he a forger, I wonder?
He might have
In
been.
fact, it's quite a nice thing, Pinchbeck, but it's not real gold. It's a sort of...
That's right. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to
Trying to create gold.
Pass it off as though it were gold.
And a saxophone is a delightful instrument, which you don't hear enough of these days. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Invented by?
Well, it's presumably somebody called Sax, because it
Adolf.
certainly wasn't Adolf Sax, was
Yes.
it?
Yes.
We're trying to keep Sax out of this program.
You fight your way through towards your 2 marks. These are all, as they say, eponymous, named after their inventors or discoverers. Adolf Sax invented, I think, the sax horn as well as the saxophone. Von Eschscholz discovered, I think he didn't invent it, he found this Eschscholzia, which I think is a kind of Californian poppy, if I remember rightly, Anne. And Christopher Pinchbeck was a watchmaker who made an alloy of copper with a little zinc, which stood out brilliantly like gold. And Abel Tasman discovered Tasmania and various other things too. 2 marks. Now, the next round is a round of recorded poetry. And this is a team round, so that the people in each team can collaborate together openly rather than doing it covertly, which they've been doing up to now. 2 marks, if you can tell me who was the poet and what was the poem of which the following is an excerpt. And we start with Denis and Anne, and your bit is being read by Sir Ralph Richardson.
Whether the summer clothe the general earth with greenness, or the redbreast sit and sing betwixt the tufts of snow on the bare branch of mossy apple tree, while the nigh thatch smokes in the sunthaw. Whether the eavesdrops fall, heard only in the trances of the blast, or if the secret ministry of frost shall hang them up in silent icicles, quietly shining to the quiet moon.
I can only try Browning or Tennyson.
No, it's earlier than that.
Coleridge or Wordsworth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Coleridge, let's try
Yes.
that.
Coleridge it is. And think of this being a wintry poem. Can you remember the title?
I can only think of Keats and Agnes Eve. It's not that.
No, it's earlier. No, you've got Coleridge.
you've
Coleridge
got
is right.
Coleridge.
Yes, quite right.
No, we don't know it, Jack.
It's Coleridge's Frost at Midnight. 1.5. Now, Frank and Dilys, your excerpt also is being read by Sir Ralph Richardson.
Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind. Or on a half-reaped furrow, sound asleep, drowse with the fumes of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers.
It's very romantic.
Very romantic. Yes?
We think it might be Keats.
Keats. Name of the poem. This is not awfully difficult to deduce from what's
Well, it's
Keats ode to something.
It's very
half-reaped furrow.
it's very nature, isn't it?
Ode to Autumn.
That's right.
Ode to old season of mists
Ode to Autumn,
and
and
mellow
mellow fruitfulness.
That's right. Keats's Ode to Autumn, and 2 marks. And now a quick round on words beginning with the letter P for pudding. So for 2 marks, what word beginning with the letter P can be defined in these ways? Denis Norden: of, containing, connected with, or acting by means of, wind or air.
Beginning with P.
Yeah.
Pan American Airways. Pneumatic.
That's right.
Pneumatic.
That's 2 marks. Dilys Powell, and beginning with P again, an insubstantial apparition.
Phantom.
Phantom is right. 2 marks. Frank Muir, a
pneumonia.
Frank Muir, yours is a song, chant, or anthem of a sacred nature.
Psalm.
Yes, 2 marks. Psalm it is. And Scott James, a kind of grouse.
Ptarmigan.
Quite right, 2 marks. So now we come to the last round and to Denis and Frank's quotations, and the marks will be awarded on the length of the applause from the audience in the theatre. Denis, your quotation is, see what the boys in the back room will have. Denis.
Well, most people are aware that Johann Sebastian Bach wrote more than 1,000 musical compositions, but what I found out only quite recently was that he also produced no less than 20 children. Mm-hmm. Now, I must say that increased my respect for him no end. You see, as a bit of a creative artist myself, I know what it's like trying to produce work of an enduring nature with, in my case, just 2 kids hitting each other in the next room, but to have churned out all those immortal toccatas and capriccios and things with 20 of them belting each other about, that really does take some doing, because you take the naming of all those children. I mean, just from my 2, I know just how many working hours are completely lost going through that dictionary of Christian names, that you know, the trauma of all that, you know. Edwin means happy conqueror. Yes, yes, but Robert means famous in council, you know. Well, whole days get wasted on that. So what it must have been like for a man who not only had 20 of them to label, but also had a mass in B-flat minor to get done by Christmas. My guess is after about the 11th kid, he just started naming them from the yellow pages. Nevertheless, what you have to ask yourself is, how did a man who probably had to spend as much per week on Smarties as the rest of us do in a decade, where did he get the wherewithal to just stay at home knocking out fugues and motets and the odd Magnificat? Well, admittedly, he must have done very well from the social services. It must still have been a financial strain. So how did he cope? Well, that's where the history books help, because according to the official biographies, what this one-man population explosion did was he gave all his children musical training, and he sort of hired them out to the local gentry as personal organists or Kapellmeisters or concertmasters in ordinary. You see, he had his head screwed on, old Johann Sebastian, so he realized that having now got that big smash hit, the Brandenburg Concerto, behind him, he knew that for any one of the local dukes or princelings to install his own personal young Bach in the drawing room, it's sort of as a status symbol, it more or less the 18th century equivalent of having an 8-track stereo of your own. See, so when, on the day that the Elector of Saxony called round and said, look, I'm just about to move into my new Schloss, and have you got a spare young Bach I could hire as family music tutor, Johann Sebastian could afford to be a bit sort of cavalier about it. He said, I'm sorry, I think they're all spoken for now. So the Elector said, well, do you happen to have another one on the way? And Johann said, well, I couldn't really say. I haven't been home since this morning. So the Elector was so disappointed, he said, let me put this to you then. He said, whatever the Duke of Bavaria is offering you, I'm prepared to up the price. And Johann said, now you're beginning to talk my language. So the Elector said, I'll tell you what, why not let me take all of you out to lunch on Thursday, then my wife can pick out one of the kids, the one that would go best with the new curtains. So next Thursday there, they all were in the restaurant, and the elector said, right then, what would everybody like to drink? And Mrs. Bach said, nothing for me, thanks, not in my condition. And Johann said, oh, Himmel. He said, all right, I'll make mine a double Scotch. And the elector said, well, what about the kids? At which 4 of the children said that they'd have lemonade, 5 asked for a fizzy orange, 3 opted for apple juice, 6 for blackcurrant cordial, and Carl Philippe, who was the precocious one, he said, make mine a daiquiri. Now, the waiter totted that lot up and said, I'm sorry, sir, but that only makes 19 drinks for the children. There's one, Johann called the roll, and sure enough, one was missing, little Wilhelm Dry Cleaner. That was the one that they did pick out from the yellow pages. And he said, where's Willie gone? And all the other kids said, oh, Dad, you know where he's gone, which is always the case, isn't it? I mean, when you take a whole bunch of kids to a restaurant, at any given moment, there's always one who has to scoot for the doings, you see. So Johann said to the elector, shall we wait till he comes back? And the elector said, no, I've got a better idea. Whereupon he turned to the waiter and he uttered the line which has resounded ever since through musical history. See what the Bach in the boys' room will have.
Great complaints from West Germany, but we'll go on to Frank Muir, and his storyline was, if music be the food of love, play on, which is the Duke's first lines in Twelfth Night.
Tony Shrine said that to me. He didn't say it to me, actually, he said it to Jack Longland. Tony Shrine, who is probably one of the finest radio producers the BBC or this country has ever had. And I say that with the full confidence that whatever cuts are made in when this program is edited, that line will stay in. These programs are edited, so if we thump the table or burst into a paroxysm of coughing, Tony chops it out again. Which reminds me that some time ago, my wife and I were celebrating our wedding anniversary, and we got a bit maudling, late in the evening, and we said, what is it that I do that irritates you? And she said, it's your body noises. Food has a funny effect on me. If there's anything exotic or any strange combination of food, I get these sort of huge hiccups. There's a great galvanic twitch of the body, and combs and ballpoint pens leap out of the inside pocket, and the cufflinks snap. It's sort of... And not only strange food, not only strange combinations, but I mean, if we go out to a dinner party and the hostess says, I've got a lovely thing I think you'll enjoy. It's slices of avocado with ginger and marmalade. And my wife goes white. 2 spoonfuls in. There's another thing, though. There's another sort of hiccup I get from fluff. I mean, things like emptying the vacuum cleaner bag. Absolute death. And the sneezes from little flakes of material floating around in the air are quite different. The hiccups go together in a batch, in a bunch. It's sort of... It's rather like a monster bull walrus with his fin caught. Well now, normally speaking, before coming on a program like this, I eschew all strange combinations of food. I have, and all materials which could give off fluff. I have a couple of boiled eggs and homemade bread for lunch. And I'm hiccup-free, and Dilys usually wears beautiful silk dresses, so there's none of the honking sort of hiccup. But the other week, something went wrong. I was very hungry when I arrived, and the little Japanese man was going. And Anne also is hungry before the show, and she usually brings sandwiches. And she had these lovely sort of chives and cucumber and little bits of raw onion sandwiches, and they were absolutely delightful. But, of course, about 3 minutes into the programme, and Jack, luckily, just didn't pay any attention. I stuffed myself in the hole under the desk and put the handkerchief in my mouth and passed it off. But in the second half of the programme, Dilys felt hot, took her jacket off, and she had a powder blue Angora top. So it went. Oh. So Jack stopped the show, quite rightly, until I'd recovered. But Tony Shrine came up to him afterwards and said, "Jack, you shouldn't have stopped the show. This is a recording. I can edit those things out. Just carry on." But Jack said, "Do you mean if he's eaten something strange, or even if there's wafts of little fluffs of material coming across?" And Tony Shrine said, "Yes, yes." And then he said this marvellous line of Shakespeare's. He said, "If Muir's hic be the food or fluff, play on."
And by your vote, ladies and gentlemen, nevertheless, Denis Norden wins the story, and he and Anne Scott James also win this week's entire contest.
Taking part in My Word were Anne Scott James, Dilys Powell, Denis Norden and Frank Muir. The chairman was Jack Longland. The questions were compiled by Peter Moore, and the programme was produced by Tony Shrine.
You've been listening to My Word from the BBC.
My Word. A panel game devised by Tony Shrine and Edward J. Mason. Dilys Powell and Frank Muir challenge Anne Scott James and Denis Norden in a game about words, with Jack Longland in the chair.
And we go straight into the first round, which tests their respective vocabularies. And 2 marks. Can you tell me what the meaning of the following words may be? Beginning with Frank Muir. And Frank, yours is tatterdemalion. Tatterdemal, and then lion at the end.
It's a lovely word, isn't it? It sounds like a character in one of those sort of Cornish stories, isn't it?
Yes.
An aunt, do you think? Tatterdemalion. Winston Graham's Poldark.
Yes, that sort of thing. But what's it mean?
I'll go and talk to Tatterdemalion. She'll know. It means somebody who wears tatters.
Yes. Well, a ragamuffin, a ragged fellow. I've been given a most splendid one by Peter Moore, who set the question. Eschscholzia. How's that?
That's very good. Slabberdigullion doesn't come in Poldark. Slabberdigullion comes in Robert Louis Stevenson.
Anyway, 2 marks to Frank. Anne Scott James, chicanery, Chicanery, chicanery.
It's when a hen lays an egg away from the nest.
I like that.
Or a sort of little bit of crookedness or cheating on a rather sort of sleazy scale.
Usually in what sort of context, Anne?
Buying and selling, I would think, particularly in the property business.
Trickery, artifice or evasion, but often in a legal sense, and pettifogging is another word which is almost exactly equivalent to it. And it comes from a French word, chicane, which means sharp practice at law, which again comes from a Greek word. 2 marks. Denis Norden, pantograph, Pantograph, pantograph.
Sounds like those pictures you have going up the side of the underground.
Of course it does.
Yeah. Yes, I know what these are, because we had one. It's difficult to describe. It's a thing it's got a kind of lazy arm on it, which pulls out, and it has two pens, one pen on the end of the lazy arm, and if you trace the outline of a picture, the other pen will copy it, either smaller or larger.
That's absolutely right. 2 marks.
I thought it was spirit writing, but that's not on, I gather.
No, I think that...
No go.
Yes, if you can remember the word, I can't at the moment. There is one for that. Yes. Dilys Powell, your word is cacophony.
Cacophony. A very, very disagreeable collection of sounds.
Absolutely right. Discord of sounds, sounds that jar the ear, or the use of harsh-sounding words or phrases. Frank Muir's friend, Lord Chesterfield, said, I think to his illegitimate son, avoid cacophony and make your periods as harmonious as you can. 2 marks. Now, before we go on to the next round, here are the quotations you've been given for the last round of all, and Frank, yours is, there are fairies at the bottom of our garden, and yours, Denis, is, distance lends enchantment to the view. So, now a round of poetical triplets. For 2 marks, can you recite the verse or poetical phrase to which the following 3-word quotation belongs, and tell me, if you can, the poem, and if possible, though I won't mark this against you, the author. And Frank Muir, yours is appropriately a broken-hearted woman.
There's a green-eyed yellow idol.
That's right.
To the south of Kathmandu.
North.
North of Kathmandu. It's the sketch, inverting the sketch. There's a little marble cross below the town.
Above.
There a broken-hearted woman tends the grave of Mad Carew. And that little god forever gazes down. He was known as Mad Carew by the subs at Kathmandu. He was hotter than they felt inclined to tell. But for all his foolish pranks, he was worshipped in the ranks. And the colonel's daughter smiled on him as well. She was nearly 21. And arrangements had begun to celebrate her birthday with a ball.
Albert, do. 2.5 marks. Green Eye of the Yellow God by somebody called J. Milton Hayes, whom I've been totally unable to trace. Anne Scott James, Rough Male Kiss.
I haven't got the slightest clue, but I'm getting there's hissings in the ear, my left ear. Dennis, take over, dear.
Osbert's moustache.
It was given to me in the 6th form as an example of a very apt metaphor, and it's the rough male kiss of blankets.
That's right.
And it's in Rupert Brooke.
All right, 2 marks. Denis Norden, Death's Pale Flag.
That's Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, quite right.
Death's Pale Flag. It's something that's not waving yet, or not wagging. No,
yes,
it's
yes,
not hardly
right.
Poetic enough.
It's quite the right sentiment, Dennis. Beauty's ensign yet. Can you get on from
No.
there? Right. Well, 1.5. It is Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is gazing on what he thinks is the corpse of his lover, Juliet, but she's only taken a draught, and she will wake up again, but too late. Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advanced there. Now, Dilys Powell, rooted in dishonour.
The faintest idea.
Idylls of the King.
Idylls of the King. Oh, it's Tennyson.
Yes. His honour, rooted in dishonour, stood, and faith unfaithful kept him falsely true. The point being that Lancelot was unable to love the maid Elaine because he himself was faithful to Guinevere, although that was a dishonourable love because it was his chum's wife. All right, round 3. A round of origins and derivations, and 2 marks again. How did the following words or phrases originate, or from what did they derive? And Frank Muir, your word is fascinating.
Well, it means sort of charmed.
Yes.
It's enchanted in a way by, one is just absolutely fascinated by a person.
Yes.
Usually a person.
Charm and enchantment are both dead right, 2 marks. It originally was a Latin word, fascinum.
Well, it meant if you, when you drive a car and the chicken gets in the headlights, it can't move.
That's it, that's the other bit.
Or when people switch on the television and can't move away from it. They're held by this kind of evil eye.
It's a witch's spell, and bewitching or casting of the evil eye, and as Frank quite rightly said, by inference, the hypnotizing effect some creatures such as snakes and stoats and weasels have on other unfortunate creatures like rabbits and birds. 2 marks. And Scott James. A backlog. 1 word, B-A-C-K-L-O-G.
Is this sort of lumberjacky Canadian type word? No.
It is.
No, not as... the log used to be real enough, but not in a lumberjacking sense.
The only logs you can get now are damp, diseased elm. What one wants is a nice, well-seasoned
they burn
oak.
very well.
I've got a lot of that.
Yes, but it's got...
And it's remarkable. It's a kind of scientific anomaly, because our wood at home is non-inflammable. Totally non-inflammable.
Keep it for 10 years, Frank. It'll improve no end.
Yes, it will. That's quite right.
And the logia.
Yes, in the logia. That's right, as Frank so kindly helps me.
All right, give us the current meaning of backlog, and I'll give you some marks.
Oh, well, it just means a sort of great big pile-up of work not done. It means when the out tray is empty and the in tray is full.
Yep. All right, you get 1 out of that.
Thank you.
Originally, it was the very big log you put at the back of an open hearth fire to support or buttress the smaller logs and bits and pieces you had in front. By extension, it then came to mean a deliberately kept reserve of business or stock or whatever it was to keep you going for some time, like that big log did at the back of your fire. Dennis, to tot up. Tot up.
Well, I can only think... The only explanation would be it's short for to total.
That's fine. It's when you were writing out your accounts in longhand, like medieval clerks used to do, they used abbreviations where they could put beasts, and they used to put tot as an abbreviation for totem, the Latin, or for total, or even put the letter T to show that the account had been fully paid up. And tot up, since that time, means to add up.
Wouldn't it have come from that remnants of Latin, tot and quot, how many and so many, isn't it? Wouldn't it have come from
Sounds
that?
very plausible, doesn't it? Yeah. I don't know. I haven't seen that as a derivation.
Well, let's float that one.
Float that one, shall we? Anyway, you get your 2 marks. Dilys Powell's turn. Dilys, and you know about this, a deadline.
Deadline? Well, it's the cause of early heart failure in people of my profession. You have to get something done by a certain time, or else.
That's right, but how did it originate?
In the death of a number of journalists.
No, in deaths, but not of journalists.
Oh, well.
It has a quite literal sense.
Isn't it a printing term?
No, it absolutely literal is.
Just anybody, isn't it?
No, if you crossed the line, you were dead.
Oh, it's Anderson.
That's right.
Town.
Yes.
It's the American Civil War.
Yes.
When they had this concentration camp and there was a line, and everybody crossed it.
North or south, yes. Jolly good.
Yes, I'll give you your 2 marks. A line of demarcation drawn round a military prison or detention centre, and if the prisoner went beyond that line and tried to climb the fence, he got shot as soon as he passed the line. And as Frank Muir quite rightly says, at Andersonville, the Confederates, prisoner of war camp, holding Abraham Lincoln's chaps, first invented this. So over the line, bang, you're dead. 2 marks.
Dilys, when you had deadlines for films to write, did you used to write notes in the dark while the films were being shown? I've always wondered about that.
I never write in the dark. I can't.
No?
I can't write accurately in the light.
I once tried to take some careful notes of an Italian film, which I thought was extremely beautiful, called L'Avventura. And so I took careful notes, and I went home, and I saw on a piece of paper buildings.
Well, that's a start, anyway. Now, a quickie round of adjectival antonyms, by which I mean you'll get 2 marks if you can suggest an adjective or adjectives which means exactly or nearly the opposite of the one I'm going to quote. Frank Muir, your word is hoity-toity.
Oh, thank you. Hoity-toity, huh? And the opposite of hoity-toity,
Yes.
the antonym. Well, it depends really on what use you make of hoity. Well, I suppose they all do, don't they? Unassuming.
Yes, that's a perfect one. It's better than anything I've got, and I'll pass it once. I won't bother you with any. It's much the best I've got. 2 marks. Anne Scott James, yours is pernicious.
Well, absolutely advantageous and to the good. Have we got one word, Dennis?
Yeah.
Beneficial, we think.
Beneficial, beneficent or benevolent, I think any of that class. It could be, I suppose, creative or could be salutary. Anyway, yours was a perfectly good one, 2 marks. Denis Norden, yours is nonchalant.
Shouldn't.
2 marks.
Well, it is one of those words like Frank was saying about inflammable before.
Yes.
What's the opposite of inflammable is flammable, which means being able to burst into flame.
That's right. But just in order to add a slight
uneasy.
coda. Yes, that's right. Or it could be concerned, or it could be
ill at ease.
Ill at ease. Yeah. It could be warm, I think. Never mind. 2 marks. Dilys Powell. This is very hard to pronounce. I'll try. Brobdingnagian.
Lilliputian.
Yes, I'm bound to give you that at once.
Excellent.
Which means Brobdingnagian from Swift's Gulliver's Travels are those horrible people about 80 feet high, the Brobdingnags, giants, and the opposite, as Dilys says, were the Lilliputians, who are 6 inches high. So the opposite, in other terms, of Brobdingnagian is small, minute, diminutive. 2 marks. And now we come to the last round, to Frank and Denis's quotations, and the marks will be awarded on the length of the applause from the audience here in the theatre. And Frank Muir, your quotation is, "There are fairies at the bottom of our garden," which I think is just a bit of Victorian nonsense.
Well, that's as may be. But I'm in a bit of a filthy mood at the moment, but due to an unfortunate experience I had at breakfast this morning. I've got progressive melancholia, what the psychiatrists call progressive melancholia, which is an extreme sadness at what we call progress. And I submit that only in this era of progress would a really very, very good bar of chocolate be advertised, not by the quality of the chocolate, but for the loud noise it makes when you break it in half. Yes. But the progress in breakfast foods. What's happened to breakfast? What's happened to porridge? Do you remember porridge? Warming, filling. In Scotland, it nourished a nation for centuries. It was made on the Sunday night, cooled off, poured in the kitchen drawer. Every morning the crofter took a handful of it, put it in his spoon. Bit of salt, nourished him throughout his long day. All that, it became instant porridge. And instant is a modern word meaning very slightly quicker and much worse. And then this American, Mr. Post, invented breakfast cereal. And we had marvellous sort of tiny little potato crisp things made out of wheat. And with a lovely packet with a picture of a smiling chap bounding across called Sunny Jim. What they've done, these new and different and progressive people, is they've taken grains of wheat, and they've banged them flat and called them flakes. And it's not really wheat or anything. It looks like the leavings of a cart horse's nose bag. Very nourishing though it is, and very tasty. But now, you see, there has to be something different. And my wife has had to give up this stuff like the leavings of the cart horse's nose bag, like it as she does, because the cats also like it, you see. And these two Burmese, and she has this running fight with them at breakfast. And I sit opposite, and they crash into my paper from the other side. There's nothing more likely to destroy a man's nerve than reading the paper at breakfast and a cat crashes into it. You don't expect it, you know. So my wife changed and bought a huge carton of stuff, a new stuff, I don't know if you've met it, called Huskies. And Huskies, which looks, and I must say tastes, like finely ground corrugated cardboard. Turns out to be the new thing, which it isn't the wheat or the corn, and not because, you know, that's supposed to be the stuff, but they've now decided that's awfully bad for you. And it's not the wheat germ, because it's the actual husk of the damn thing. And I was trying a little this morning, and suddenly this awful thing got lodged in my throat. And it was like a little bee, and it was hairy, and it... And I didn't panic, of course, you know. I kept my cool. I tried to dislodge it by screaming. and my wife said, I'll go and get a bit of bent wire. And I said, no. So what I did was there's a roll of towel at the back of the kitchen door. So I draped myself through the roll of towel with my legs dangling one side and my head dangling the other. And I knocked my head rhythmically on the floor. And suddenly, out of my throat dropped this minute plastic caveman. But not only that, it was... The thing was covered in sort of hair. It was sort of furry. I thought, what the devil's that doing? And I picked up this modern, new, progressive cereal, and there, on the back, it said, see inside. Free cavemen. Collect them. Found a fine, furry family, it said. So, well, all I can say is, well, there is progress for you. Honestly, I'd emigrate. And I've started the serial in the Sunday paper. There's British progress for you. If you come to breakfast at the Muir family, I have to warn you before you pour out your cereal, watch out! There are furries at the bottom of our carton.
I'm bound to remind Frank that huskies are also Eskimo sledge dogs who would eat up his 2 Afghans in about 3 bites. And we go on to Denis Norden and his quotation, distance lends enchantment to the view.
When last week the British Society of Opticians sent me an invitation to attend their annual dinner and dance, it's known, I think, as the Eyeball, I knew exactly why I'd received the invitation. It's because I am still the only person in the country wearing upside-down bifocals. Now, to explain how that came about, I'll have to take you back to the first time I ever realized that I might need glasses. I forget exactly what it was that made me suspect it. I think it was when I found myself trying to dial the pencil sharpener. But when I went along to this optician in Kensington, and I asked him for an eye test, he said, well, certainly. He said, can you read what it says on that chart on the wall? Well, I looked for a moment, and I said, well, easily. HARRODS. He said, no, that's the window you're looking at. And he then proceeded to place upon my nose a specially fitted sort of glasses frame into which he dropped various kinds of lenses. Then when he'd got a combination of lenses to his liking, he indicated where the chart actually was, and he said, now, try and read the third line. But after I peered at it in silence for about 3 minutes, he said, well, can't you read any of the line? I said, oh, yes, I can read all of it. It's the pronunciation I can't manage. But he went a bit tight-lipped, but after a bit more messing about with this kind of optical slot machine, he wrote me out the prescription for my very first pair of glasses. Don't use them constantly, he said, just when you need them. So for about 2 years, I didn't wear them all the time, just for reading or writing or trying to find the piano. And I might never even have bothered to go back to him, except one warm summer morning, while I was gazing out of the bathroom window, I heard our daily woman say, those people 2 houses along, I think they let the whole neighbourhood down. And I said, well, what have they done then? She said, well, can't you see they're nudists? Within the half hour, I was back in Kensington, explaining that it had now become imperative for me to have distance glasses, if possible, before dusk. And that is how I began suffering from what is possibly the most temper-fraying source of aggro that modern man can fall victim to, having one pair of glasses for reading and another pair for ordinary looking. In some people's professions, it can mean quite considerable inconvenience. And I'm thinking particularly of a friend of mine who's a knife thrower. Because he was the one who put me on to the answer to this problem, bifocals. He said, 2 pair of glasses in one. And what's more, when I put this to my Kensington bloke, he was all in favour. He says, very simple bit of optical construction. He said, all we do is we make the top half of the glasses for distance, the bottom half for reading. I said, no, hang on a minute. Now, to understand why I gave pause there, what you have to remember was that this was back in 1965, the first glorious dawn of the miniskirt. And it just idly drifted across my mind that because the most natural way of looking at the lower half of a person is through the lower half of your glasses, well, if that lower half is only designed to make print visible, you see what I mean? No, I said, what I'll do, I'll have my bifocals the other way round. Now, as for having the distance part at the bottom, well, that has all sorts of advantages besides the miniskirt one. For example, if you're ever placed in circumstances where someone says, look the other way while I get out of these wet clothes, all you have to say is, okay, I'll look up at the ceiling. All right? So, and it's exactly that kind of evidence that I shall be giving when I review these bifocals for the assembled ranks of the British Society of Opticians. Reading lens, I shall say, perhaps not entirely satisfactory, but distance lens, enchantment to review.
By your vote, ladies and gentlemen, Frank Muir wins the story, and he and Dilys Powell also win this week's contest.
Taking part in My Word were Anne Scott James, Dilys Powell, Denis Norden and Frank Muir. The chairman was Jack Longland. The questions were compiled by Peter Moore, and the programme was produced by Tony Schrein.
You've been listening to My Word from the BBC, heard each week at this time.
My Word. A panel game devised by Tony Schrein and Edward J. Mason. Dilys Powell and Frank Muir challenge Anne Scott James and Denis Norden in a game about words, with Jack Longland in the chair.
And we go straight into the first round, which tests their vocabulary. 2 marks if they get things right. I want to know what the meaning is of the following words. And we begin this week with Denis Norden. Denis, yours is gerrymander. One of my dictionaries tells me it could be gerrymander, but I don't like that one at all. So shall we settle for gerrymander?
Well, it always sounds like the husband of salamander.
Well, it comes in.
I don't really know what it means. I know it only comes up in American books. And it's some bit of political fraud. I believe it's the thing they call stuffing the ballot box.
That's right. Roughly. Yes, that'll do. It's a way of rigging an election, and what you do is to rearrange the voting district so that you get too many extra representatives for your particular party. And Denis was absolutely right in this business about salamander. This sounds unlikely, but it comes from a governor of this particular state of Massachusetts who was called Governor Elbridge Gerry, who died in 1814. And when he'd finished mucking around with the boundaries, the state of Massachusetts on the map looked like a salamander, whatever a salamander looks like. So it's a combination between Gerry and salamander, or mander. 2 marks. Dilys Powell, yours is insouciant, or if you prefer it the other way, insouciant.
Well, it means not bothering about anything. Souci being care in French, and insouciant or insouciant meaning not caring.
Absolutely right. Nothing to add. 2 marks. Frank, your word is macaronic. I better spell it for luck. Macaronic, macaronic.
It's appertaining to or having the characteristics of macaroni.
Well, it's characteristic.
It's long, thin, with a hole in the middle.
Characteristic of your favourite century, Frank.
I bet I know what you want.
Good.
Macaronic verse.
That's what I wanted.
Macaronic verse was verse where you interpolated, it could be Latin or Greek, but usually Latin words into the English verse.
Well done.
And the other way round, for that.
And the other way round. Yes, it's a burlesque form of verse, particularly characteristic of the 18th century, which is Frank's favourite century, in which you get 2 or more languages jumbled together, either intermixing modern words, which you've Latinized, or Latin words, which you've modernized, and plus bits of genuine Latin. Anyway, 2 well-earned marks to Frank. And we go on to Anne Scott James. Anne's word is interstice, I-N-T-E-R-S-T-I-C-E, interstice.
Well, there's a kind of very up-to-date kind of gardening where your garden doesn't have any beds and it doesn't have any grass or really not much in the way of flowers. What you have is paving, is it like that? And you don't call it a backyard or a terrace, but you call it a patio.
Yes.
And in the cracks or interstices, you sow little packets of seeds, and with any luck, 1 in 100 crops up.
And it's quite right. It's a relatively small or narrow space, like a chink or a crack, or in some kinds of body between the parts which compose it. It can be a short intervening space of time. 2 marks. Before we go on to the next round, here are the quotations you've been given for the last round of all. And Denis, yours is, "At Christmas I no more desire a rose." And yours... and yours, Frank, is, naturally, "busy as a bee." Well, now the second round is a round of femme fatale, or dangerous women. Ladies in literature whose effect on gents was either dramatic or pretty nasty. So for 2 marks, can you name the lady for me if I give you the following clues? And Denis Norden, yours is an Edwardian adventuress. Her beauty had a fatal attraction for the undergraduates at Oxford University.
Oh, yes, that would be Zuleika Dobson. That was a super book. Why don't they do that again? Yeah, that was the lady when she passed, the statues broke into sweat.
That's right. Absolutely right. It was those emperors round the Sheldonian Theatre at Oxford who all melted into tears, and later on they melted almost completely. They had to be replaced because they were all falling to bits. But Zuleika Dobson, Zuleika, Max Beerbohm, and because of her, the infatuated undergraduates all committed suicide in the river Isis. Dilys Powell, according to Christopher Marlowe, her countenance was materially advantageous to the shipbuilding industry.
Helen.
Yes. Can you expound a bit?
Helen of Troy.
And why?
This is the face that launched 1,000 ships.
Burnt
the topless towers
of Ilium.
Ilium.
Absolutely right. This is from Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, and Helen of Troy, her face, so beautiful, most beautiful face in the world, launched all those invading ships from Greece to take part in the Trojan War. 2 marks.
Right.
Frank Muir, to a lanky, self-employed Victorian misogynist, this retired prima donna was, quote, always the woman.
Gladstone.
No, he preferred them on the streets. No, that's perhaps rather
well,
naughty.
retired opera singers was a euphemism for...
Oh, I see, yes.
Well, that's half a mark.
Gladstone. No, he was lanky, self-employed Victorian misogynist, and I'll help a bit here, frequently connected with a hypodermic syringe. This
Sherlock Holmes,
yes.
is it?
And
who was
the lady?
I have no idea. Surely a lady didn't impinge too closely on Baker Street.
She beat him.
She beat him? What with?
His landlady, I should think.
His landlady, yes.
His landlady.
I'm going to give you 1.5, partly for effrontery. It's Irene Adler in A Scandal in Bohemia, the only woman who actually outsmarted Sherlock Holmes. Why not? And Scott James. A well-born Scottish somnambulist, she performed her nocturnal ablutions without benefit of soap and water.
Good gracious. Oh! She washed her... all the perfumes of Araby, is it?
Yes.
Could not wash her...
Sweeten.
It's Lady Macbeth.
Yeah.
Now, that's all right. It's out damned spot. It's in the middle of the play of Macbeth. Lady Macbeth sleepwalking and saying all the perfumes of Arabia were not sweetened, this little hand, because it helped with the murder of Duncan. 2 marks well earned again. All right, we go on to a round of poetical penultimates, because for 2 marks I want to know what is the often quoted line of poetry that follows on the one I'm going to give members of the team. We begin again with Denis Norden. Your line is, against their bridal day, which was not long. Bridal is B-R-I-D-A-L rather than L-E. Against their bridal day, which was not long. It rhymes, your next one.
Good. Is it song? Flow gently. Is it one of the? Is it
Yes.
Flow gently, sweet
Yes.
Thames, till I end my song.
Yep.
Bridal. It's what do they call those things that are bridal song? It's an I-O-N. It ends
Epithalamium.
with epithalamium.
Epithalamium. Absolutely right. It's Spencer, Edmund Spencer's Prothalamium, and it's about 2 swans of goodly hue who came softly swimming down the Lee, which I take it is the river that runs into the Thames somewhere or other.
Hackney.
Yes, 2 fairer birds I yet did never see, and it goes on, and then it says, against their bridal day, which was not long, sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. 2 marks. Dilys Powell, the trumpet of a prophecy, O wind, W-I-N-D. The trumpet of a prophecy, O wind.
If
Right.
winter comes, can spring be far behind?
Absolutely right. Do you remember what it's in?
Shelley, Ode to the West Wind or Wind?
Wind it has to be, otherwise it won't rhyme.
Right.
Frank Muir, my Mary's asleep by thy murmuring stream.
Flow gently, sweet Afton. It's don't disturb her dream.
That's
or
right.
something. Don't upset her dream.
Disturb not her dream. Absolutely
Disturb
right.
not her dream.
Poet?
Oh, it's Burns. It's Burns.
It's absolutely right. Burns is flows gently, sweet Afton, and there it is, 2 marks. And Scott James, By the living God who made you. That made you, sorry. By the living God that made you.
Is this Kipling?
Yes.
Though I've sown you and I've flayed you by the living God that made you, you're a better man than I am.
Gunga Din.
2 marks again. And now a quick round of double definitions. What in a single word can be defined by both the following definitions? 2 marks for the first member of his or her team to answer correctly. I'm going to treat this as a sort of contest without turning it from team to team. And the first one is fraudulent nonsense, a lump of peppermint toffee.
Humbug.
Humbug, Denis, 2 marks. The second one is to vibrate tremulously, a toxophilist's receptacle.
Pass.
Quiver.
Frank Muir.
I always thought the collective noun for bridegrooms should be a quiver of bridegrooms.
This third one is of reddish-brownish hue, H-U-E, to place in insular isolation.
Place in insular. Reddish brownish. Port.
Yes, it's what did you do when you put Robinson Crusoe on that island? You
Maroon.
That's right, Frank's got it.
There's a bang with that. There's maroon's a bang, isn't it?
There's a bang too, yes, but that doesn't come in. Maroon, which is reddish-brownish colour, and if you place somebody on an island intending that they should stay there for the rest of their lives, that is to maroon them. Now, the last one is a form of stretcher, the detritus of civilization.
Oh dear.
There's a £25 penalty on most London lampposts.
Oh, what, for dogs?
That works both ways. Yes, no,
Litter.
Litter.
Well,
Dilys, well, it's absolutely right. A litter. A litter is a form of stretcher. It's also what civilization unfortunately leaves behind it. Well, now we come to the last round after Denis and Frank's quotations, and the marks will be awarded on the length of the applause from the audience here in the theatre. Denis, your quotation is, "At Christmas I no more desire a rose," which comes from Shakespeare's Love's Labour Lost and is spoken by Barone, one of the lords attending the king, King Ferdinand.
Well, among the most fascinating pieces of show business memorabilia I came across was a collection of letters sent by the ringmaster of a small travelling circus touring the northernmost counties of Scotland from Inverness-shire to Caithness. And they're all addressed to the proprietor of the circus, who was apparently roughing it at a 5-star hotel in Jersey. And the first one read, November the 15th, I'll read them out to you. November the 15th, things are becoming increasingly difficult. Our takings, like the breeze that blew down the big top, are light and variable. What is more, as a consequence of having to perform his act in the open air, Supremo, our human cannonball, had the misfortune to crash into a low-flying aircraft. I'm endeavouring to obtain a replacement for him, but I fear it will be difficult to find a man of his calibre. The next letter, dated November the 26th, in that one they'd moved on to the county of Sutherland, and it reads, "Things are going from bad to worse. Ram Das Jamshid, our Indian mystic snake charmer, endeavoured to liven up the business by posters announcing that for the first time in any ring he would perform his snake charming with 3 wild cobras, one of whom was tone deaf. We all owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Jamshid, who would have been 38 next Thursday." November the 30th, the town of Dorach on the Firth. I am beginning to entertain serious doubts about some of the attractions you have booked for this tour. I agree it was good circus to feature a man diving from the top of a 100-foot tower into a small bath of water. But did you realize we are having to use a different man every night? As for our lion tamer, Captain Magnifico, were you aware that he is actually a flea trainer whose eyesight went bad on him? December the 3rd. I'm afraid we had to depart Loch Brora somewhat hastily because several members of the audience noticed that one of Madame Zorba's team of magnificent wild Arabian liberty horses is actually stuffed. You will recall that after my phone call last month, in which I reported the death of this horse, I did express misgivings about your suggestion that we come to an immediate arrangement with Messrs. Denton and Deems, the local taxidermists. Well, despite all the precautions we took to bring this animal on while the ring was darkened, and notwithstanding Madame Zorba's best pretense at feeding it sugar after leaping on and off its back, I'm afraid many patrons charged us with taking a dead liberty. On the same tack, I have to pass on an inquiry from Buffalo Cyril Cody, the star half of Cody and Bessie, Western knife thrower extraordinaire. As you know, that power blackout we suffered during his act last Thursday could not have happened at a worse moment. Accordingly, he wants to know whether, rather than break in a new Bessie, you might prefer him to get in touch again with Mrs. Denton and Deems. December the 16th, heading for Caithness, and these blinding headaches of mine are getting worse, especially after the complaints I'm now receiving from performers about the equipment you've provided for them, quite apart from the disheartening effect it has on a trapeze artist when, after performing a 2.5 gainer mid-air somersault, he finds himself flying towards a trapeze that bears an out-of-order sign. Quite apart from that, I did say from the first that when you have got a midget sword swallower, it is simply asking for trouble to provide him with normal-sized swords. I don't like to say I told you so, but while he was rehearsing yesterday on a patch of open ground, Rosita, the lady contortionist, came by, and when he tried to impress her by the intake of that 4-foot sword, well, my worst fears were borne out. At last night's performance, the best we could do was use him as a tent peg. Rosita, the lady contortionist, is now quite inconsolable and has retired to a caravan where she spends all day sobbing quietly into the small of her back. December the 22nd, I resign. Scripta, the tattooed lady, is the last straw. Knowing the special relationship that has existed in the past between you and her, I made no mention when she took up with Elasto, the India rubber man, despite the fact that she forced him to dance in such close conjunction with her that he rubbed out half her pictures. But now that she is associating with Herculo, our strong man, I can take no more. So debilitating is the effect she has had upon him, I just cannot face the prospect of explaining to audiences why it is that in order for the world's strongest man to lift a 300-pound barbell, he now has to bring on a forklift truck. I know it is unprofessional to leave the company before the last venue on our tour, but as in that other example of love's labour lost, at Caithness I no more desire agros.
Well, we go on to Frank Muir's story, and if you remember, his line was, busy as a bee, which is a proverb, but you'll find it all over the place in Chaucer and Lilly's Euphues and elsewhere as well, I think. Busy as a bee, Frank.
It's what I am, all day long. When my publisher rang up only today to ask why the new book is 4 years late in starting, and he said, what have you been doing all day? I said, busy as a bee. It's absolutely true. You know, I was musing the other day. It was quite late at night. Television was off. My wife had retired to bed, and I was just finishing my nightcap, just stitching the tassel on. I was thinking that of all trades which are misunderstood, that of authorship surely must be misunderstood more than any. I think it was James Thurber who said every writer should have over his desk a little inscription which says, "Author's wife to author, you can't tell me you're working staring out of the window." In fact, authorship is a most grueling, difficult, hard, physical and mental labour. You see, it takes so long, it takes so much time. It's all a question of time. I mean, in the 17th century, John Bunyan said, he had so much to write, he said, give me time, give me time. So the Bedford magistrates gave him 12 years. But while he was in Bedford jail, you know, he had a tremendous output of marvellous books, including, you know, Life and Death of Mr. Batman, and see, most people in earlier, even today, you know, most people in earlier centuries became clergymen because at least that gave them 6 days off, you know, in which to write. And even today, you get spy stories written by John le Cure. But in the old days, you see, people like the Reverend Sidney Smith were noted writers in the 19th century, and Tennyson, you know, one of the inaugural meetings of the Society of Authors, you know, he went back and noted in his diary about the meeting, cannons to the right of me, cannons to the left of me. And not only the Church of England, I mean, up in Scotland there was Rabbi Burns, and of course probably the most famous of them all, Alexander Pope. It does take a tremendous effort. I mean, take my normal working day. I have to place myself into a condition, force myself into a state of potential creativeness. Now, this consists of 5 extremely difficult tasks, which I have to force myself. The task consists of breathing, composing, abstaining, cogitating, and beholding. These are the 5 processes of preparing oneself so that a thought, a creative thought, will enter the author's brain, not unlike a vagrant mustard seed lighting on a damp flannel. Now, breathing, you see, I have to put my feet up on the desk. And then breathing's quite difficult when your feet are up on the desk because you're constricted, you see. And you mustn't breathe too hard. You mustn't go, or you go all dizzy with oxygen poisoning. And you must remember to keep breathing. Otherwise you die. So there's breathing, you see. Now, composing is not writing a choral motet. It's composing as against decomposing, really. It's attaining a blissful state of composure. The next thing is abstaining. You must abstain from any kind of energy. I mean, if a log is needed for the fire or the washing up to be done, you know, you've got to force yourself to abstain from these things. Abstain from answering the front door and abstain from letting the dog in. Then cogitation. Lower the eyelids, breathe, abstain from any outside influences, and cogitate. In other words, meditate. Don't meditate on anything. Just sort of meditate. And while that's going on, you are then enabled to enter into the 5th stage, which is beholding. Now, beholding isn't looking. Beholding is looking upon. So you can gently raise the lids, still breathing, rhythmically, and just behold the toe caps of your shoes, perhaps the lawn, only half cut. You don't do anything about it. Don't do anything about it. It's because of interruptions like that you can't produce literary work. Just the same as you can't produce a closely cut lawn if you're interrupted. Hence the expression half a mow. You see, if you just concentrate on these 5 things all day, feet on desk, breathing, composing, abstaining, cogitating, and beholding, that is a writer's life and my life. So when my publisher rings up, as he does daily, and said, how's it going on? What sort of day have you had? I'm quite honest with you. So I say, my usual day. Breathing, composing, abstaining, cogitating, beholding. Actually, I don't go through all that because it's too long. I just use the initials of the words. So he says, what sort of day have you had? And I say, oh, the usual day. BCE, ACB.
By your vote, ladies and gentlemen, Frank Muir wins the story, and he and Dilys Powell also win this week's contest.
Taking part in My Word were Anne Scott James, Dilys Powell, Denis Norden, and Frank Muir. The chairman was Jack Longland. The questions were compiled by Peter Moore, and the programme was produced by Tony Shrine.
You've been listening to My Word from the BBC, heard each week at this time.
My Word. Panel game devised by Tony Shrine and Edward J. Mason. Dilys Powell and Frank Muir challenge Anne Scott James and Denis Norden in a game about words, with Jack Longland in the chair.
And we go straight into the first round, which tests their vocabulary. For 2 marks, what's the meaning of the following words? We begin with Frank Muir this week. Frank, yours is incunabular, or if you prefer it, you can call it incunables.
It sounds like a bone in the lower part of the leg, isn't it? It isn't. It's it used to be called 15ers.
Yes.
In fact, and it printing, modern printing, was begun round about 1440. By Herr Gutenberg, and printing, which was printed between 1440 and 1501, has a special quality to collectors, and this was called incunabular.
Yep.
The books and the sheets printed between them, which is the nursery of printing.
Absolutely right. And it comes from a Latin word, curiously meaning swaddling clothes, things you wear in the cradle. 2 marks, Frank. And now, Anne Scott James, your word is couvade, Couvade, and in spite of my pronunciation, perhaps recognize it's French in origin, couvade.
Well, when you go into a restaurant and you have a rather nice cheap French meal for about £2 a head, very good, and then there's a couvade on top for about another £2. That I take to be the meaning of the word.
No, you would have to send for a gynecologist or obstetrician. If you
it's when the husband of a woman in childbirth has a sort of hysterical childbirth too, and goes to bed at the same time.
That's right. Separately?
I decline to answer that.
This is a curious...
Depends whether you're in a private or a public ward.
Yes, that's right, then. It's a curious custom among some primitive peoples where the husband pretends to be ill and goes almost to the point of having birth pangs himself, and so he's put to bed during his wife's accouchement and has certain restrictions placed on his diet and his other activities as well. And it comes from a French word meaning to hatch. Denis Norden, your turn. To absquatulate. A-B-S-Q-U-A-T-U-L-A-T-E. Absquatulate.
Well, it's a rather one of those old-fashioned, rather heavy-handedly humorous words for to hop it or to make your leave or something. Yeah, I don't know if anybody remembers a radio double act called Alexander and Mose. Yes. And they always used to finish by saying, well, boy, I think we should absquatulate now. And then I think it always used to come in those kind of humorous articles or books where Americans were always named Hiram P. somebody or other. And they use the word absquatulate.
I think the government's trying to bring on bills in reference to housing to absquatulate people.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, I think that was probably, actually, it was one of those almost schoolboyish made-up words because it does sort of divide up into that. You've got ab away from squat, sit.
Yes,
and
yes, it's this sort of very facetious thing. You take an ordinary word like squat and you put a Latin prefix and a Latin suffix onto it. And it's quite early. It comes first, I think, in 1830. But to abscond, to decamp, to go and squat somewhere else. 2 marks. And now Dilys Powell, and your word is jobation, J-O-B-A-T-I-O-N, jobation.
Jobation? Having a job, I should have thought.
No, Joe, that's why I said it isn't jobation, it's jobation.
Well, it's being rather wretched then. He was covered with boils, poor Job was.
Yes, this is not a physical ailment, though he probably felt pretty miserable. In fact, he felt pretty miserable throughout the whole of the book of Job.
He did, didn't he? Yes, he had a lot of comforters.
Yes, and what did they do?
Well, they didn't really comfort. They sympathised falsely and made him feel much more wretched.
Yes, I think they were trying to help, but they were pouring...
They were enjoying it. They were enjoying it.
Pouring prosy old bores, that's what they were, really.
Yes.
Well, that's right. Jobation means a prolonged, tedious reproof, a sort of rocket which goes on and on forever, and it is because what were called Job's comforters, who were supposed to be his 3 best friends, did him no kind of good at all. Yes, I did give a little help there, Dilys, so 1.5 out of 2. Before we go on to the next round, here are the quotations you've been given for the last round of all, and Frank, yours is a pun is the lowest form of wit, and yours, Denis, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper. Well, now we have a round of poetical pairings, and for 2 marks, can you recite the lines of poetry from which the following 2-word quotation has been extracted? Frank Muir, yours is unofficial rose.
Oh, Peter Brook. Rupert Brooke.
Yes?
Yes, it's the old vicarage, isn't it? Grantchester.
That's absolutely right. Can you put it in its settings in a couple of lines?
Unkempt.
Yes.
About these hedgerows, blows, an English unofficial rose.
Well done. Absolutely dead right. Anne Scott James, yours next. Your 2 words are double sway. S-W-A-Y. Double sway.
Help.
Oh, I don't know.
Any clues coming?
It's a difficult one. I'll give you the 2 lines previously, which might help. I won't guarantee it. At church, with meek and unaffected grace, his looks adorned that venerable place.
Goldsmith.
Oh, of course, Oliver Goldsmith.
And the poem? You ought to get this now.
Oh, yes, the village, the deserted village.
Yes. This is the parson in the village of Auburn, which is the deserted village in Goldsmith's poem. Truth from his lips prevailed with double sway, and fools who came to scoff remained to pray.
Yeah. Not easy.
No. Not easy at all. 1.5. Denis Norden, Little Life.
Little life is rounded. Yes, that's our little life is rounded with a sleep.
Yes. And from?
That's Prospero's speech where he says our revels now are ended.
Quite right.
Well done.
And we are such stuff that dreams are made on, not of.
And our little life is rounded
with a sleep.
Quite right. Shakespeare, The Tempest, Prospero's... Prospero's great speech while the scenery of the mask dissolves round the back of the stage, and speaking to Miranda, among others. 2 marks. And Dilys Powell, yours is Runcible Spoon.
Runcible Spoon? What yes, didn't it? My very learned partner says it's Edward Lear.
Yes. Can you...
honey, isn't it? Yes, the Owl and the Pussycat.
Lear, the Owl and the Pussycat, they dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon, and hand in hand on the edge of the sand they danced by the light of the moon. 2 marks. Well, now a quick round for Lonely Hearts. Now, I asked the teams last week to bring along for us their own favourite line or favourite passage culled from the pages of romantic literature. And we begin with Frank Muir this time.
I think one of the loveliest lines that I know, romantic lines, it was by Sheridan, although it's attributed to him, but I still think he could have said it, where he said to a young girl, "Won't you come into the garden? I'd like my roses to see you."
Well, now it's Anne Scott James's turn. Anne?
I'd like just to give 2 lines, which it's... I'm so sentimental about Greece, always, and they just always make me cry or want to cry whenever I hear them, which is Byron's "The mountains look on Marathon, and Marathon looks on the sea."
And from?
Don Juan.
Yep. Thank you very much. And now, Denis Norden.
Well, I found 2 very short ones. One from a poet who Frank often mentions, called John Byrom, not Byron, in the 18th century, wrote a poem called Colin and Phoebe for the Spectator, in which he said, "My fair one is gone, and my joys are all drowned, and my heart, I am sure, weighs more than a pound." And the other one is one that I read many years ago, and I thought it was one of the most romantic 4 lines I ever heard. I still think it's pretty good, and it's I think a nice example of sort of good bad writing, and it's a love poem where the chap says, "Come dally me, my darling, dally me with kisses, loiter me with lingers while the Romes all burn."
Lovely. Lovely. Thank you very much, Dennis. And now, Dilys Powell.
Mine is really rather romantic. I found it a long, long time ago in an anthology of, I think, English madrigal verse. And I no longer have my book, but I learnt it by heart because I liked it so much. And it says, "See, see what I have for my darling, a robin redbreast and a starling. These I give both in hopes to move thee, and yet thou sayest, I do not love thee."
Charming, pathetic. On this occasion, the chairman was allowed a quotation from romantic literature,
Okay, good.
which I'll give you. "There were never 2 so cut out for one another. We both love singing, dancing, treats and music. We sit and talk and wrangle and are friends. When we are together, we never hold our tongues, and then we always have a noise of fiddles at our heels. He hunts me as merrily as the hounds does the hare, and either this is love or I know it not." It's Dryden in a play called Secret Love.
Lovely.
Well, we now come to the last round and to Frank and Dennis's quotations, and the marks will be awarded on the length of the applause from the audience here in the theatre. Frank's quotation was, "A pun is the lowest form of wit." Frank.
What an awful thing to be said to you at the end of 22 years of this stuff, isn't it? And it was said to me by our local master baker, Mr. Huskerson, who's got a bakery in Lion Lane. We've been living in our house now for 25 years, and I'm trying to plan a little party for locals in Thorpe who've also lived there 25 years. And I thought we should have it as it was 25 years ago. You know, the chaps should wear sock suspenders and pocket watches in the top pocket with a kind of thong which fastened to the buttonhole, and the ladies should wear hats and artificial flowers and California poppy scent. And I thought for tea we must have Chelsea buns. And I went to Mr. Huskisson and said, could I have some Chelsea buns, please? He said, that sort of baking is not in my curricula. He said, it does not figure in my modus operandum of the Master Bakery of Lyne Lane. He said, I'll tell you what, Mr. Muir, he said, I've heard your programme, My Word, for some years now, and he said, if you can make me laugh, he said, then I will manufacture that particular article which you requested. He said, because after all, one good turn deserves another. So I went away and thought, right, fine, yes, I'll make him laugh by doing a My Word twist on one good turn deserves another, you see. So I rushed back and said, it took me about a day to work this one out, you know, and I said, Mr. Huskisson, did you see that report that there's a kind of auction in Virginia Water where everybody auctions off rubbish they don't want? And in the local paper, I said, did you see that thing that there was a tea urn which was about 1812 or something, and it was put up for auction and nobody bid at all. I said, is that right, Mr. Huskisson? Surely one good urn deserves an offer. Nothing. So I rushed away again, and I came back and showed him my pullover. And I said, I've got an actor friend called Arthur Howard who loves hand craftsmanship. He loves the way people sew, and he really appreciates it. And look, I burnt my pullover with some tobacco from my pipe, and my wife's done a little darn on it. And I think I should give this pullover to Arthur, don't you? Because one good darn deserves an Arthur. His face was impassive. So I went back the following day and I said, did you go to that young Conservative wine tasting party? He said, I did not have the pleasure. I could not vouchsafe that kind of time. I am busy baking. I said, I went. It was rather interesting because the chap next to me was tasting all the wine, but he had a vintage card. You know, he had a sort of wine card with all the vintages on, which told him which were the good years. And he was saying, yes, that's a very good year. And he said, I took the card and I tore it up and threw it away. And I said, and as he was nipping the wine, he didn't know one from the other. I said, it just shows you that wine card torn deceives a niffer. Nothing. I said, Mr. Huskisson, won't you please... I realised I was on the wrong tack, you know, with that kind of thing. I said, Mr. Huskisson, won't you please bake us 12 Chelsea buns? He said, that I will not do. I will not do, sir, from a question of philosophy. I said, never mind that, sir. Think, Mr. Huskisson, think of the importance of buns through history, through literature. I mean, Shakespeare, Hamlet, get thee to a bunnery. When you think of plays like Victorian melodramas, Maria Martin, or the Mystery of the Red Bun, you know, or the films of Africa, of lions being brought up on that delectable substance, bun-free. I said, won't you reconsider? He said, Mr. Muir, may I be outspoken? He said, I do not relish plays on words. I do not think that they behove you. He said, they are at the lowest part of the fulcrum of humour. He said, it is not analogous, he said, to my trade, because I start with ears of wheat, as you start with the vocabulary of the English language. He said, it is ground into flour, to you it makes words. I might bake a batch of cottage loaves, or you might make a novel. He said, but don't waste this precious substance. He said, I will not make buns because it's just a dollop of dough, Mr. Muir. He said, I would ask you to bear in mind in your trade the old saying that we master bakers have. A bun is the lowest form of wheat.
I do hope Frank got his party after all. And we go on to Denis, and his line was, if I can get it, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper from Peter Piper's practical principles of plain and perfect pronunciation. Denis?
Well, sometime towards the end of last year, the night porter of a well-known London hotel sent me a rather unusual cassette tape that he'd recorded. And it went something like this. Hello, testing. Hello, Mr. Norden. Having listened to your programme, I realise how badly you need an interesting story. I think actually he must have been related to Mr. Huskisson from The Voice. He said, realising you need an interesting story, let me explain that being the night porter of a big hotel of this large size, I do have the opportunity of observing many strange and pathetic human dramas, especially as I also do a lot of peeping through keyholes. But the strangest tale, whatever unfolded, was last December when an eccentric millionaire arrived here to occupy our most expensive accommodation, the Crippen Suite. He was a small little man with a military bearing, which he tossed from hand to hand while he spoke to you. And the first thing he did was hand me a bunch of fivers and instruct me to purchase him a pair of night vision binoculars. And it was when I returned with them that he disclosed to me his bizarre plan. Apparently, for all his wealth, he only had 1 month to live. At the end of that time, his wife was coming back from her mother's. But he said, what I'd like to do during this period of freedom is use my money to benefit a victim of the affluent society. Have you ever known what it's like, he said, to be without in the midst of plenty? Well, as it happened, I had, because I once worked as a caretaker in a girls' school. Well, when I nodded, he said, what I'm going to do is scan the nighttime streets through this pair of binoculars till I spot someone in real need. Some poor, poverty-stricken, starving, down-and-out pauper with no job, no money, no home, no prospects. Then I'm going to give him the greatest New Year's Eve he's ever had in his life, because for that one night he will not only be given the finest dinner that money can buy, not only the finest wines in your cellar, not only the use of this luxurious suite with its marble bathroom and its satin bed sheets, but also the companionship of the most beautiful girl in the whole of this cold-hearted city. Well, Mr. Norden, to say I was flabbergasted would be understating. I was so taken aback I very nearly gave him the right change. But sure enough, night after night, he stood gazing down from that window till finally, at 7 o'clock on the evening of December the 31st, my buzzer went. But when I went up to his room, an hour later, he was in high excitement. That's him, he said, pointing down from out the window, down there, him curled up asleep in that litter bin. I looked down and I saw, well, how can I describe him? Filthy, unshaved, bleary-eyed, ragged, unkempt, unwashed. And those were his attractive aspects. Right, said this millionaire. The rest is up to you. While I depart for one of my opulent chateaus in the Doi Dong, I want you to fetch him up here and see that he is given the pick of the most expensive items in your kitchen. Oysters, lobster, pheasant, champagne, even a cup of coffee. Then, at 15 minutes after midnight, this young lady, known to the select few as Miss Earth Shatterer of 1937, she will knock at this door, and when she departs in the morning, you will present her with this large sack full of Swiss francs. Well, Mr. Norden, knowing that you have to keep these stories of yours down to a certain level of long-windedness, I will skip the details of how I collected that strong-smelling person from down in the litter bin and fulfilled all the details of the rich man's behest. What I must mention, though, is that by some strange twerp of fate, our world-renowned French wine waiter, Monsieur Mohammed Patel, he wrote down the wrong order for this chap. Instead of serving Chummy 4 bottles of the 47, he trundled in 47 bottles of the 4. Consequence was that at 10 minutes after midnight, when I was making my customary round of hotel keyholes, what do I see through the aperture of the Crippen suite? There is Mr. Unsavoury lying sprawled across the Charlotte Russe, dead to the world. I realised immediately what had happened. Him being in a starving state, him and the old year had passed out round about the same time. So what's the first thing that immediately comes into my mind? Well, obviously, that when that exquisite bit of gift wrapping comes tapping at his door in less than 5 minutes from now, the only thing that she's likely to get in the way of entertainment is the Scottish dancing on BBC Two. Right? Well, Mr. Norden, if there's one thing in this world that I hate, it is waste. That really goes against the groin. So, in less time than it takes to tell, I had opened that door with my master key, bundled our friend there down the laundry chute, whipped off my porter's jacket, slipped on a silk dressing gown, and had 2 glasses of champers poured out ready. Mr. Norden, in expressing the doubt that you will ever have 1/10 as happy a New Year as I had that night, I just hope you can put to some use this strange tale of how an eyeballing hotel servant availed himself of one of the perquisites meant for an inebriated indigent. Or to put that whole thing in one line, peeping porter nicked a perk of pickled pauper.
By your vote, ladies and gentlemen, Denis Norden wins the story, but the overall result of this week's contest is a draw.
Taking part in My Word were Anne Scott James, Dilys Powell, Denis Norden and Frank Muir. The chairman was Jack Longland. The questions were compiled by Peter Moore, and the programme was produced by Tony Shrine.
You've been listening to My Word from the BBC, heard each week at this time.